And a very warm welcome to His Lordship Justice V. Gopala Gowda, retired Judge of Supreme Court of India, and all the participants who have taken out the time to attend. And I would also like to thank Justice Satish Chandra, retired judge from the High Court of Allahabad, and thereafter appointed as the chairperson of CSTAT Commission. I thank you all for coming here. And today's talk and the session is being for which Justice Gopala Gowda is the speaker, and he's going to speak on the land acquisition laws in the country. Before we start the session, I would like to give you all a brief introduction of His Lordships. His Lordships, Justice Gopala Gowda, was born on 6th of October 1951 in the state of Karnataka. He did his BSc from Mysore University and LLB from Bangalore in 1975. He was enrolled as an advocate on 14th of November 1975 and joined the chambers of Sri K. Subba Rao and S.C. Reddy Senior Advocates, Bangalore. Thereafter, his lordships went independent in his practice from the year 1979 at Bangalore before the High Court, district courts, as well as tribunals. During his lordship stint as a profound lawyer, he just a second, I'm just having some issues here with the voice. I'm sorry for the interruption. I just had a call from His Lordships. Yes. So His Lordships was practicing in Bangalore before the courts, High Court and other tribunals. During his lordship stint as a profound lawyer, he handled matters of constitutional importance, land reforms, and other fields of law. His lordships was always keen on passing on knowledge and thus took up the assignment of a part-time assistant professor from the year 1983 to 1991. His lordship had been the standing counsel for Bangalore Mahanagar Palike and also for Karnataka Public Service Commission, Bangalore. Thereafter, his lordship was elevated as a judge of Karnataka High Court on 11th of June 1997. His lordship, despite being a judge, also took up the responsibility and functioned as the executive chairperson of Karnataka State Legal Services Authority, appointed by His Excellency, the Governor of Karnataka, for a span of 4 years from 2006 to 2010, and also as a member of National Legal Service Authority, New Delhi, from 2009 to 2011. Justice Gopala Gowda was also sworn in as the Chief Justice of High Court of Odisha, Cuttack, on 25th of March 2010. Elevated as a Judge of Supreme Court of India thereafter on 24th of December 2012. His Lordships retired from the Honorable Supreme Court of India on 5th October 2016. During his time as a Judge of High Court of Karnataka, Chief Justice of High Court of Odisha, and Judge of Supreme Court of India, his lordships had delivered various landmark judgments which had settled the position on different fields of law. So today I will only tell you some of his achievements, which the country has because of his judgments only on the area of land acquisition law. His lordships in the area of land acquisition law, as the Chief Justice of High Court of Odisha, had quashed the land acquisition procedures for the Vedanta University that was proposed to be established on 8,000 acres near Konark Puri Marine Drive, and directed that the acquired land be returned to original owners as the proposed project was initiated in complete violation of the land acquisition laws. Similarly, another major contribution of his lordship in the field of land acquisition laws came as a presiding judge of Honorable Supreme Court of India, where the acquisition for Tata Motors to build the world's cheapest car, Nano, in 2006 of nearly 1,000 acres of land in Singur district was declared completely illegal and void. The state government was directed to return the land to its owners in 12 weeks, and the landowners were also permitted to keep the compensation that they had received. So this was the kind of judge that we had in Supreme Court who always looked after people's interest, a common man's interest. Now, apart from the above major contribution, his lordship during the corona pandemic also came out as a savior for the unattended plight of the migrants. It is because of his lordship's article that was titled as A Supreme Failure. It was printed in the English news daily papers. Immediately as his lordships had written that article, and it was published in the papers, it was the very next day that this Honorable Supreme Court suo motu took action and directed the government to favor the migrants. So this was a very, very brief and profound introduction of his lordship. And now I would like to hand over the program to his lordship, Justice Gopala Gowda. I would like to also inform that Justice Gowda, like you're about to start, we already have 250 participants before we can start, and there are 81 in waiting. So a very, very warm welcome to all, and thank you all. And I thank Justice Gopala Gowda, who helped Udit Kishan and Associates, as well as Fortis India Law to organize this event. Over to his lordships. Thank you. Yes, Justice Gopala Gowda. So,
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Udit Gupta and Associates.
yes.
Thank you, Mr. Justice Chandra, Satish Chandra, and all my lawyer friends who are who have participated in this webinar. I must thank the organizers having given me this opportunity to give certain aspects on an important topic of the land acquisition laws. The land acquisition laws during the regime of British, there was an enactment called Land Acquisition Act of 1894. In addition to that act, each state government, since the matter is in the concurrent list, acquisition of land for public purpose, the state legislature have enacted the different enactments for the purpose of acquisition of land for the public purpose as defined in their respective statutory enactments enacted by the different in the different states by exercising their legislative power under the Constitution of India. 1894 Act was abused, misused to the greater extent, though the first constitutional amendment, the then Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the Prime Minister of this great country, felt that to give effect to the Part 3 rights to the citizens and Part 4, it will be very important to abolish the landlordism. Therefore, Article 31 was amended by first constitutional amendment. Thereafterwards, the Land Acquisition Act was there. Landlordism was abolished. Though landlordism was abolished in this country, the industrialists, in the name of sustainable development, hundreds of acres of land got acquired under the pretext it is a public purpose, because they're all registered in the Companies Act. And some real estate agents, a cooperative society, is also a company by virtue of subsequent amendment to Section 2 of the repealed Land Acquisition Act of 1894. Having regard to the abuse, misuse of the land is a scarce resource. India is agriculture-based economy. Rural India, 70% of the population live in rural India. At the time of independence, the population of this country was 39 crores. The land area, geographical area, is the same as exists today. Today, the population in India, it has crossed 133 million of people. The land is same. The agriculture produce, horticulture produce, and the commercial crops, pisciculture, animal husbandry, floriculture are all the occupations of the rural India agriculturists and agricultural laborers. 70% of the people produce the food grades and other allied, the agricultural product which are defined under the Agriculture Marketing Act of 1966 in different parts of the country. Therefore, the land is very, very important from the viewpoint of the people of this country, particularly the agriculturists and also the industrialists and the capitalists for developing, and also the state government and central government for developing infrastructure for the purpose of developing industry and to generate employment, to provide the employment to the youth of this country. The youth of the country today are facing great problem of unemployment, which we are witnessing now during coronavirus pandemic. 11 crores of unorganized sector migrant workers have been traveling from different parts of the country to their respective states to reach and live there. So therefore, the land is very scarce, very important from the viewpoint of the agriculturists as well as the state, industrialists and the capitalists to develop infrastructure facilities, provide employment and also acquire the land in the name of companies if it is for the public purpose as defined under the Land Acquisition Act of 1894, which is repealed. Now the present provision, right to fair compensation, transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation, resettlement act of 2013. For acquisition of land, the power of the state is to be exercised eminent domain power. The eminent domain power is defined by Hugo Grotius, a 17th century Dutch philosopher. He had propounded that property of subject is under the eminent domain of the state. Such state may use, even alienate and destroy such property for the ends of public utility. So this is the power of the state to exercise its power to acquire the land for the purpose of the infrastructure development as well as for the public purpose in favor of the companies, private companies, government companies and the entrepreneurs who have undertaken or who will undertake for the purpose of the public purpose, public utility, public use. So this is very important. You must keep in our mind. So therefore, the eminent domain power is very much recognized with the state government. The three factors which are prerequisite for the exercise of the power of eminent domain, namely the authority of law, number one, number two, the requirement of public use, three, the payment of just and reasonable compensation. What is just and reasonable compensation is provided under this statute and interpreted by the apex court in caton of cases interpreting the provisions of the repealed Land Acquisition Act of 1894. Now, this is the power of the state government, eminent domain power of the state on these three factors which exist. So, the authority of law, for that purpose, from the concurrently, the entry number 42, the Land Acquisition Act was enacted. 1894 till 2013, when the act that the repealed 1894 was repealed, the Act of 2013 was enacted by the Parliament because they found that there is a misuse and abuse. For the reason, as on the date of this acquisition, the acquisition of land in independent India affected 21.6 million people during the period from 1951 to 90. So vast area of land for in favor of the company to lay the railway lines, to establish the public sector undertaking, companies, establish the factories, housing purpose, and so on and so forth. Industrial area has been carved out for industrial development. All these things affected 21.6 million people during the period from 1951 to 1990. Thereafterwards, the government national policy for rehabilitation figures around 75% of the displaced people since 1951 have been waiting for rehabilitation. From 1951, 75% of the displaced people were not provided resettlement and rehabilitation. This was also a very important factor. And the repealed Act 1894, there was no scheme, there is no provision for resettlement and rehabilitation of the displaced persons from their homes and their lands, acquiring the lands for the public purpose by the state government across the country. This is a very important factor which kept in mind by the state government, by the parliament. The very important aspect which we have to remember, 73rd and 74th Constitution Amendment to the Constitution of India during the year 92-93, and Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister of this country, with the avowed object, decentralization of power should be given to the village panchayat. Thereby, the village republic can govern themselves. They will have the say in the matter with regard to various aspects for the rural development is very important. This, because of 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment, local self-government, either the village panchayat or taluka panchayat, jilla panchayat, municipal corporations and municipalities have been worked there. Thereafterwards, 73rd and 74th, number of the powers, duties conferred upon them to see that they themselves must rule their local self-government as a local self-government in their respective panchayat area, taluka panchayat area, jilla panchayat area. That is the three-tier system was come into existence after 92-93. The Charles Metcalfe, in his words, was the acting governor, Governor General of India from 1835 to 36. On the functioning of the village panchayat, he, during 19th century, he has recorded as under the village communities are little republics, having nearly everything they can want within themselves, and most independent of any foreign relations. They seem to lost where nothing else lost. Dynasty after dynasty crumbles down, revolution succeeds after revolution, but the village community remains the same. The union of the village communities, each one forming a separate little state in itself, has, I conceive, contributed more than any other cause to the preservation of the people of India. This is very important. Through all the revolutions and changes which they have suffered, and is in a high degree conducive to their enjoyment of a great portion of freedom and independence. This is the observation of the then acting Governor General of India, this is the observation. He also felt the village republic, communities republic is very little and they must be conferred with the power. That is the source for 72nd and 73rd Constitutional Amendment. No doubt, when the Constitution was accepted by as country became republic, Section 40 in the directive principles conferred the powers upon the village panchayat system. The very relevant aspects, I don't want to go in detail for want of time, I want to run through quickly. Therefore, I don't go in detail with regard to directive principles, Article 40, Panchayat Raj system, etc. Part 10 and Schedule 10 and 11. So many render social justice to serve the village communities. Number of entries are provided in 10th schedule, 11th schedule with regard to the agriculture, social forestry, so on and so forth. Therefore, Section 40, Article 40 of the Directive Principles State Policy was strengthened by 72nd and 73rd Constitutional Amendment. Though at the time of drafting the Constitution, one of the committee member, Sri Anantasayanam Iyengar, of the drafting committee of the Constitution, in the Constituent Assembly, he presented his opinion in the village panchayats before the assembly, which is recorded as under. Who are these republics? He has taken the link from the general, that is Governor General. He has made observation. Who are these republics? They have to be brought into existence. Therefore, I would advise that in the directives, a clause must be added. That's why Article 40 is added in directive principles, which would insist upon the various government that may come into existence in future to establish village panchayats, give them political autonomy, also economic independence in our own way to manage their own affairs. It is further to be noted that entry 5 in the list 2 of the state leagues to the 7th schedule of the Constitution enables the state legislature to make laws pertaining to local government, which also include the powers to be vested on the municipal corporations, improvement trust authorities, mining settlement authorities, district boards, and other local authorities for the purpose of village administration and the local self-governments. The Constitutional Amendment 92, 93, 73, and 74 uniformly in the structure of the 3-tier, etc., etc. So, this was the observation during the drafting of, at the time of drafting of the Constitution. This is the speech rendered by the Constituent Assembly member, who was also the member of the drafting committee. That is, in this background, we are required to examine the land acquisition laws in this country. Pursuant to 72nd and 73rd Constitutional Amendment, there is the transparency in land acquisition, rehabilitation, resettlement is provided in the new enactment after repealing the Land Acquisition Act of 1894. Therefore, my dear friends, we have to examine the land acquisition law, the eminent domain power of the state to acquire the land for the public purpose has to be examined, keeping these aspects in mind. The background of the Land Acquisition Act 2013 must also be examined in the proper perspective, keeping in view the constitutional right, fundamental right, and the statutory right of the landowners, public interested persons, affected families, as defined under the Act of 2013. The right to fair compensation and transparency of the Land Acquisition Act, enacted by the Parliament in September 2013, repealing the the Land Acquisition Act 1894. The Land Acquisition Act 1804 has always been subject to heavy criticism due to its largely anti-landowner approach. These related to forcible acquisitions. The acquisition, whether it is a public purpose, there is a need, no need, or the proportionate to the requirement, it is acquired or not acquired. Acquired lands have been permitted to the beneficiary to make use of it, subsequently convert into a real estate business. Therefore, the forced acquisition in exercise of eminent domain power by the state, this is one of the important aspects, was the earlier act is an anti-landowner approach was there, forcible acquisition and definition of public purpose, widespread misuse of the urgency clause, section 17 of the repealed act, urgency clause. Urgency clause was invoked without inquiry, before declaration, take the possession, without depositing required amount on the basis of as provided in section 17 of the previous act, without whether there is satisfaction, whether requirement urgency is there or not, all these provisions were misused. And these are the very important vital aspect of the matter which fell for consideration for the parliament members, and lack of transparency in the acquisition process, participation of communities whose land is being acquired, absence of provisions for rehabilitation, resettlement, packages to the farmers, weak implementation and ineffective administration at the ground level, increased suffering. After the acquisition of land, possession will not be taken, you will not be allowed to cultivate, the compensation is not paid, awards are not passed, awards are passed very mechanically, methodically, in violation of the provisions provided under section 23 and 24. They did not follow. Law laid down by the Supreme Court with regard to the market value to be determined, not determined, against which appeal is filed. The second appeal up to the Supreme Court. In this process, it went on for 30 to 40 years to receive the compensation by the landowners, public tenants and interested person is one more important reason. Therefore, and further, there is no clarity of public purpose after the amendment to section 3F clause 6 of the repealed act. It is widespread public interest, public purpose has been widely interpreted and given power to the state government with regard to the definite judgments of the Supreme Court of giving interpretation, and an amendment to section 3F where cooperative society, housing cooperative society, he can also make a requisition to the state government for the purpose of acquiring the land, allotment of sites in favor of the persons who are settled in urban area, who are well placed than the farmers. They have to acquire land for farm layout, allot sites, big dimensions. Over a period, real estate business has gone up. The one site they are selling 2 crores, 3 crores like this. That is why the interpretation of public purpose has widespread and forceful acquisition has landed the farmers in a very traumatic stage. Therefore, the parliament members thought that act must be repealed. In view of this, the power of acquisition must be redefined. It must be transparent. It must be accountable. Rehabilitation and Resettlement Act of 2013 Act is enacted. So therefore, my dear friends, the statement of object and reasons, if you clearly see under the Act, there are in the preamble, it has clearly said there are 25 objects were incorporated in the bill before it was passed. All these aspects, there are so many 25 aspects are there. The comprehensive definition of public purpose, comprehensive rehabilitation resettlement, public purpose is defined, and the uh, uh, the compensation component has been increased, market value has been defined, what should be the market value, how it should be calculated, what is the basis, what is the materials, and to that it should be added. Earlier it is 30% solatium, it has been increased to 100% solatium as provided in the first schedule to the Act. So therefore, this Act enacted by the Parliament, which has come into force with effect from January 2014, according to me and according to the Supreme Court and the parliamentarians, it is a welfare legislation to protect and safeguard the interest of the farmers, not only the farmers, farming section, and persons who are depending upon the agricultural occupation and operation, agricultural laborers, millions of agricultural laborers who are living in the rural India, their interest also must be protected in the noble idea, not just the object of enacting this act. This act we have to examine, interpret, keeping in view Article 14, Article 14, 19(1)(g). I am not saying 19(1)(f). 19(1)(f), 44th Constitutional Amendment. The Parliament has amended, taken out from the fundamental right to own the property is no longer a fundamental right. That is put to Article 300, capital A of the Constitution of India, which is a constitutional right. Constitutional right 300A under the Land Acquisition Act, right from 2004 Hindustan Petroleum case. The Supreme Court has interpreted the constitutional right is a human right. So these constitutional provisions ready with Article 40, 73rd and 74th Constitutional Amendment to the Constitution of India, we must keep in our mind for the purpose of appreciating this act. The act objects, there are so many which for want of time I may not in a position to deal with all these aspects. Now, with regard to the procedure to be followed, infrastructure facilities, section, what is public purpose is defined, section 2, 1A to F, what is the public purpose is defined, the strategic purpose regarding naval, military, air force, armed forces of the Union, including central paramilitary forces, any work vital to national security or the defense of India, state police, safety of the people, and infrastructure projects includes all activities in items listed in the notification of the Government of India in the development of economic affairs infrastructure section, the notification of 2012, excluding private hospitals, private education institutions, and private hotels. Like this, number of infrastructure projects have been incorporated under section 21A according to the definition of public purpose as defined under the Act. The company is also defined, company under section 3J. It includes a company registered in the Companies Act, also includes a government company, and a society registered under the Society Registration Act, etc., etc. So these are all various definition clauses which throw light for what purpose constitutes the public purpose, what are the infrastructure facilities, what are the objects, the acquisition in favor of the central government, state government, are all the exhaustively dealt with, provided under the in this statute. Now, what is the procedure? I have to run quickly with regard to the procedure regarding acquisition of land. The Under the new act, the government should appoint a committee headed by district collector. District collector is also defined. District collector includes the deputy commissioner and also an officer who is authorized to function as a deputy collector or a deputy commissioner in that particular district. The government should appoint a committee headed by the district collector to specify the public purpose. That was not there earlier. But the requisition of a beneficiary, either a development authority or a company or a cooperative society, in the earlier Land Acquisition Act, there was no committee was there. Here, under the new act, a committee headed by the district collector or deputy commissioner of a district specify the public purpose. The report of the district collector should be considered by the high level committee constituted by the government. There is a procedure, the provision is there, and also the rules are provided, who must be appointed, what is the procedure, what are their powers, all these things, details, I am not in a position to deal with for want of time. So the district collector has to head a committee for the purpose of specifying the public purpose. He has to submit the report to the high level committee constituted by government at the secretariat level. This committee headed by the chief secretary and members includes the secretaries of different departments. If the high level committee is satisfied about the public purpose, the government proceeds to appoint an expert group to evaluate the social impact. This aspect was not there in the repealed act. Social impact, what is social impact is dealt with, I will deal with it later. Social impact of land acquisition. The committee prepares a report, that is high level committee headed by the chief secretary prepares a report, promising amongst other measures several special benefits of the land users and others who are deprived of the source of livelihood on ground of land acquisition. Even if the committee decides against the acquisition, the state government or the government, appropriate government, may still proceed with the land acquisition. They need not depend upon the report of the high level committee. So this is the procedure for the purpose of initiating acquisition proceedings by the state under the new act. Now, thereafter, what is the social impact assessment that is provided under section 4 of the new act? Under the new act, the process is initiated with the preparation of the social impact assessment study report. The social impact assessment report shall be prepared under section 4 of the act after following the mandatory procedure contemplated in the said provision and hearing the representatives of both village panchayat. This is very important. That's why the 73rd and 74th constitutional amendment importance and village republic are said by the acting general, which is referred to as Article 40 in the Directive of State Policy, has given its effect in this act. So section 4 provides the mandatory procedure contemplated in the provision, hearing the representatives of both village panchayat or municipality or municipal corporation, depends upon the land which is falling under the village panchayat area, then the members of the village panchayat, the municipality, councillors, the corporation, corporators. So they are the representatives of the area where the land is proposed for acquisition for the public purpose. So before then they have to discuss the feasibility, the social impact and environmental impact, so many other things. So this is the procedure under section 4. Thereafter, the state government, the state government or the appropriate government, central government, it goes before them. Government has to take 2 steps after receiving the report from this high level committee after consultation with the village panchayat members, representatives, municipality and the municipal corporation. The two steps is appoint a committee to prepare a report on social impact, appoint an authority for rehabilitation resettlement. It should go simultaneously. If the land is surveyed, they identify and discuss. The committee, district committee, high level committee, social impact report is there, social impact will be there. This proposed land cannot be acquired. If it is acquired, it will have a serious repercussion on the growth for growing food grains. It will affect the families. All these things will be taken into consideration by these two committees, and also state government must take into consideration. Thereafter, the rehabilitation resettlement, simultaneously they must go and conduct survey and find out if the land, this proposed land is acquired for the public purpose, either for the central government companies or the defense or naval, airports, railways, etc., then those people will be displaced. Those people will be displaced, they must be provided with the rehabilitation resettlement. Otherwise, their occupation, right to occupation is a fundamental right. Right to livelihood, life includes livelihood, is the only source of income. The Supreme Court in Volga Tellis, paragraph 32, has clearly enunciated the law. The life includes livelihood. For a living, there must be a source of income. If source of income is not there, the liberty of a person is denuded. Here, that's why I said Article 19(1)(g) read with Article 21 are important from the viewpoint of the livelihood of agriculturists and landowners, tenants, interested persons, family members who are affected persons, as well as agricultural laborers. Very important from the viewpoint of 19(1)(g). Right to occupation is a fundamental right. Right to do business is a fundamental right. Both must be balanced. If you want to acquire the land for the infrastructure facilities, rehabilitation must follow. If you propose to acquire the land for the purpose of public purpose to a company or a housing society, housing board, the rehabilitation resettlement land must be identified. So this is the safeguard. This is the safeguard which is provided under this welfare legislation under the 2013 Act. The for government duty exercise its eminent domain power, this mandatory procedure shall be followed. Before deciding, hence the step to decide public purpose, and second regarding schemes of rehabilitation and resettlement, social impact assessment report shall be prepared by the government. It may be the collector of the district where the land is situated. His report is examined by expert high-level group consisting of social scientists and other officers. So that's why the various safeguards are provided under this Act. So then, publication of social impact assessment study, that is provided in section 6. What is that study? The social impact assessment report is concerned about the purpose for which the government may acquire the land, and social impact management plan refers to the assessment of facilities provided to the persons who are affected by the land acquisition. The reports of both committees shall be published by the government in the language of the people residing in the area, and the same shall be uploaded on the website. A copy of each of these reports shall be supplied to the agency which is authorized to conduct environmental impact. This is very important. If the land is going to be acquired for the infrastructure facilities, then what will be the environmental impact? What is the social impact? The environmental impact assessment of the area proposed to acquire. Whenever any meeting is conducted for the purpose of environmental impact assessment on account of land acquisition, it is the responsibility of the persons conducting such public meetings to supply copies of assessment report They must supply copies of assessment report. If any person attending such meeting desires to secure a copy of the above reports, they are recommended to approach the website. It would have been proper for the state government or the central government, as the case may be, to supply copies of these reports, all persons attending such meeting free of cost. So this is very important. The social impact, environmental experts must be there, scientists, environment scientists must be there. What will be the environmental impact, social impact, all these things must be considered at the time of proposing the acquisition of lands, either in the village area or municipality area or the municipal corporation area. This is a mandatory procedure provided under this statute. Now, what is the appraisal of the social impact assessment report? That deals with section 7. That's section 7 and 8. After consideration of these social impact and environmental impact, the expert group, the social impact assessment report shall then be examined by the appropriate government. So, government has to consider all these reports through a high-level committee at the Secretariat consisting of Chief Secretary, Secretaries which I already told you, Revenue, etc., Social Justice, Tribal Welfare Panchayats, and 3 other experts in the field of relevant subjects. The contents of the report and the social impact assessment may deal with whether the purpose behind the land acquisition is public purpose or not. This procedure, these persons, secretaries of these departments who represent the people of different sections of the society were not there in the 1894 Act. When the Deputy Commissioner or Collector, on the basis of requisition received from the state government or the central government, he used to send the report, request them, issue the notification, film notification. This social impact, the committee, high-level committee, experts was not there in the earlier 1894 Act. Therefore, this Acquisition Act, the term is a transparency. There is a transparency in the procedure of acquiring the lands of the farmers. The other particulars relating to details of the property sought to be acquired and the impact of its the severance on the other land, if they acquire the 1,000 acres of land, remaining land will be there. If you acquire part of the land of one owner, what will be the impact, and the impact of the remaining land must also be examined by the state government. Whether there were any alternatives available, they have to examine. Any other than the proposed land, any other alternative lands are available, whether local bodies are consulted. It is only after the government is satisfied, after following the aforesaid procedure provided under section 4, provided under section 6, 7 and 8, the government has to satisfy itself. It is subject to satisfaction. About the purpose, it will proceed further to acquire land. The another important step has to be taken by the government is the scheme prepared on the measures of rehabilitation and resettlement. Simultaneously, the scheme must be prepared for the purpose of resettlement and rehabilitation, which was not there in the earlier Act. Even the schemes are examined by the resettlement committee. There is a resettlement administrator will be there, resettlement committee will be there, commissioner must satisfy what is the requirement of land, how many persons will be displaced, which is the land which is suitable, land which is the scheduled tribe people and scheduled area, lands are acquired for the purpose of the projects of the central government and the state government. If they are dislocated from the lands by acquisition, then they must be rehabilitated by providing the same extent of land acquired or 2.5 hectares of land to them. That's the safeguard. That is the safeguard. The steps must be taken for the preparing the scheme with regard to rehabilitation and resettlement. Even the schemes are examined by the resettlement committee. Government will proceed further to acquire the land by issuing notification to section 9 of the Act. The recommendation of the expert are not binding. The recommendation of the high level committee is not binding. The recommendation not to acquire either by the high level committee or the expert committee is not binding. The high level authority can also be independently, it can give its report. It regards the recommendations of expert group. It need not follow the recommendations of the expert group. It can give independently its opinion in its report. This text of the high level committee report shall be included in the report of social impact assessment. They are bound to give what will be the social impact in the report of the high level committee. The scheme approving the additional benefits under the rehabilitation resettlement need to be examined thoroughly by a superior authority in the government so that no proposal which is defective or frivolous or abuse of power, arbitrary exercise of power of acquiring the land. The executive only shall have the absolute discretion, of course, after following the procedure which I just now mentioned to you. The executive shall have the absolute discretion to decide whether a particular acquisition of land is intended for public purpose or not. So long as the bona fides of the executives are not doubted, the executive shall have the absolute discretion to undertake the projects to execute them. Land Acquisition Act originally concerned with an executed enable railways to fulfill their projects. This is the reason acquisition of land for company is treated as one intended for public purpose, laying railways, etc., etc. Now, with regard to the safeguards of food security, this is also important. I told you that the population is increasing, 39 to 130 crores. Same land, then the irrigated lands for a year 3 crop land are going to be acquired, then there will be a inadequacy and safeguards to food security will be deprived. So section 10 of the Act deals with safeguards of food security of land. The safeguard of food security, no irrigated multi-crop land shall be acquired. Such land may be acquired subject to the condition that is being done under the exceptional circumstances as demonstrable. Only an exceptional circumstance, such lands, if alternative land is not available. The multi-crop irrigated land is acquired under subsection 2 of section 210 is a last resort. Equivalent area of cultivable waste and land shall be developed for agricultural purpose to rehabilitate and resettle the displaced persons. Or an amount equivalent to the value of the land shall be deposited with the appropriate government for investment in agriculture for enhancing food security. This is the safeguard. In the multi-crop lands proposed is inevitable, it is required, the government takes a decision, then the government duty is the requiring authority must deposit with the government value of the property. That value of the property must be invested for the purpose of the providing alternative lands for the rehabilitation and resettlement. Thereafterwards, the preliminary notification under section 11. So after 10 procedure is followed, section 11 on par with section 4, the preliminary notification. Whereas under the repealed act, these safeguards, mandatory procedure, it was not there under the repealed act. The preliminary notification will be published proposing to acquire the lands after passing the social impact, environmental impact, food security, and all these things must be considered. Then it should be published in the local area. It must be circulated to the concerned all the secretaries, the panchayat area, publication, gazette notification. Again, this is the procedure. The when it is published immediately after issuance of the notification under subsection 1, the concerned Gram Sabhas will come here. So the Panchayat Raj Act, 73rd Constitutional Amendment, will play an important role in have a role to play whether there is a public purpose or not. So Gram Sabhas are Sabhas of the village level, municipalities in the case of municipal areas, and autonomous councils in the case of areas referred to in 6th schedule of the Constitution, that is scheduled areas, shall be informed of the contents of the notification. Further, the nature of public purpose involves reasons necessitating the displacement of affected persons must be mentioned there. Summary of social assessment report, particulars of administrator appointed for the purpose of rehabilitation resettlement under section 43 of the Act shall also be mentioned in the preliminary notification under section 11. And Gram Sabha, they have got a say in the matter. Then, after simultaneously the scheme of rehabilitation resettlement, the administrator has to prepare the rehabilitation resettlement scheme by administrator. The role of the administrator is also there, his appointment, how he has to do it, what is the procedure, details are provided in the statute. After the preliminary notification is proposed to acquire the land is issued, 2 steps must follow. That is, the first step is the authorized officer should survey the land and record the assets available therein, and the payment to be made for damages during survey shall be paid immediately then and there. Next is, the second step is that the administrator shall publish rehabilitation resettlement provisions. They must publish it. The administrator shall also be considered by the Gram Sabhas, and their objections shall be recorded so that they may be suitably attended to. The objections relating to rehabilitation resettlement proposal can be filed. So it is not one-way traffic. For resettlement, scheme of resettlement and rehabilitation resettlement, the Gram Sabha people have got the, we can have also the objection, suitability of that land which is identified and surveyed for the purpose of the rehabilitation. While the objection relating to survey are complied with, then and there, objection relating to rehabilitation settlement will be settled finally in appeals and references. Both the matters will be discussed at the public hearing at Panchayat level. This is most important. So not only hearing contemplated only to the land loser, owner, interested person, tenant or other persons, occupier. Here the scheme of resettlement, rehabilitation resettlement scheme, public hearing is contemplated. Whether it is suitable or not should be considered. Then and there itself, their objections must be notified. The Panchayat, village Panchayat has got a role to play as a village republic in view of 73rd Constitutional Amendment. Thereafter, that objections recorded at the Panchayat level may be attended to by the collector or the government in an appropriate manner. Thereafter, the collector shall consider and review the draft scheme submitted by the administrator and shall submit to the government for the submit its own comments to the commissioner. Commissioner is also defined here. Appointment of commissioner is provided. Powers of the commissioner is provided. Everything provided in the Act. Then the commissioner will finally approve the scheme of the rehabilitation resettlement. Thus, it is seen that question of public purpose is finally decided by the government. So this is the procedure. The procedure for the purpose of issuing preliminary notification. Thereafterwards, publication of the notification. The resettlement, rehabilitation resettlement scheme has to be prepared. It must be heard. It must be placed before the village level or the municipality or corporation. It must be heard, and the report must be sent to the government by the administrator through the collector. Finally, the question of finalizing the schemes of rehabilitation and resettlement lies with the commissioner. The Commissioner of Rehabilitation resettlement is also directed to publish final report in the locality that panchayat and municipal bodies discuss the schemes of rehabilitation, suggest measures for improvement. They have got to say in the matter. Thus, it is imperative the final authority has to approve the public purpose and schemes of rehabilitation. Resettlement may be the Gram Sabhas and Panchayat bodies. After strictly complying with the statutory requirement and rehabilitation of the displaced persons from their lands on account of the proposed acquisition of the land for public purpose, the collector shall give opportunity to the landowners to file their objections. So, this procedure with regard to the scheme of rehabilitation resettlement one side. Thereafterwards, the preliminary notification, you must serve the notice, there is a procedure, and the landowner or interested person, he has got a say in the matter. You have to give opportunity to him to file his detailed statement of objection for the proposed land of acquisition for the public purpose. Then he has got, he can say there is no public purpose here. It will affect his interest, his family member's interest, and he will be ruined, he will be deprived of his livelihood, etc., etc. The committee can hear the deputy collector or the other authorized officer from the government must give a hearing. Hearing is mandatory. After the hearing is given to the landowner, the report has to be submitted by again the collector to the state government, notifying the objections. After considering his objections, non-consideration of objection, overruling the objections, all these things he must give reasons, and the government must also apply its mind. After receiving such objection statement, the collector, etc., etc., thereafterwards under section 15(1)(a)(2) are the aspects which he can mention under section 15. What are all the aspects is provided. Thereafter, the collector shall consider the objections, etc., which I have told you. Appropriate government, after considering the report, being satisfied with the same, shall proceed to publish the declaration notifying the, along with the declaration of the area identifies as a resettlement area. So, final notification, not only merely declaration, they must also notify that the area acquired, identified and acquired for the purpose of rehabilitation resettlement must also be provided. Thereafterwards, the Act provides necessary safeguards of landowners, losers for acquiring the land for public purpose. Thereafterwards, he has to deposit the requiring under section 19(2) of the Act of 2013 after complying with the mandatory procedure, considering objections, the report, etc., etc. Now, after 19(2), he must deposit the amount of compensation as prescribed under the rules. The rules are provided for the same. After the final notification, what is the further step? The further step is notice to persons concerned, maybe the owner, interested person, tenants, occupants, for the purpose of calling upon them to prefer a claim for the purpose of, with the documentary evidence, if any, in support of them for determination of the market value. This provision is very substantial provision according to me. After publishing the final notification, acquire the land for the public purpose, calling upon everybody to, he or she, file objections, or through by their lawyer or their representative to the collector to make the award. The compensation and secondly, it is with regard to the benefits and the scheme of the rehabilitation. So, not only market value to be determined compensation, the claim for the rehabilitation and resettlement also they can make statement. Thereafter, after hearing, after considering the claim of the interested persons, owners, they have to determine the compensation on the basis of the market value of the locality or the area. What is the market value? Market value on the basis of the sale made of the contiguous land or in near the locality, the sale deed and the guidance value. Guidance value is not the market value. What is the existing market value of that land as on the date of issuing the notification under section 11 is the criteria for the collector to determine the compensation. Before passing an award, determining the market value by the collector or the authorized officer of the government, he shall consider the representation and evidence produced by each claimant. The claimants include occupiers, etc., etc. I said, proceeding of inquiry conducted to collector prior to making the award shall be thorough, and he shall give full opportunity to those who appear on behalf of the claimants. Award made by the collector may relate to the persons not only to appear before him, but those who are reputed to have interest in the land. If the collector fails to give any opportunity to the claimant, same will be rectified by the tribunal or the authority and the High Court. Because the authority is there under the Act, like reference court was there under the Act. Now, that is replaced by the authority who is or has been a district judge cadre or a lawyer who has got 7 years experience. These people are going to be constituted as an authority. To the extent of persons to whom opportunity is denied. Thereafterwards, the determination of what is the criteria for determination? That is up to section 26. This is also a substantial provision under the Act. To ascertain the market value of the property, the price at which the willing seller, this is also the same procedure under the old Act. Willing seller offers his property for sale and willing to purchase agrees to such price. In order to ascertain the price, there are several methods. One of method is capitalization. Capitalization means multiplying the annual return from the property by number of years of its expectation. The other method is adopting the price fixed by the registrar of the area, that is sub-registrar, under the Registration Act to register the sale deeds or the conveyance deeds for the purpose of stamp duty and registration. The third method is the average price of the land noted in 50% of the documents. The method involves adoption of the present value of the land, which is already developed, by deducting the cost of the development. Another method is adding prospective potentialities that might increase the price of the land. In such cases, the claimants must adduce necessary evidence by producing certified copies of the documents. Registration of document must be insisted, and no private documents, unregistered documents will be entertained for deciding the market value. In addition to the market value, solatium is 100%. Now, the market value and the first schedule, what is provided under the first schedule is that market value must be multiplied by factor. That is 1 to 2. 1 is applicable in relation to the rural area. 2 is applicable in relation to the urban area. That is, you get it in the first schedule. the components shall constitute the minimum compensation package to be given, that is, market value of the land to be determined as provided under section 26. Factors by which the market value has to be multiplied in the case of rural areas: 1. Urban area; 2. Value assets attached to the land and building also must be considered. Then solatium equivalent to 100% of the market value of the land, that must be added, and interest must be added. That is the procedure. In respect of the trees, crops, buildings, also the market value has to be determined. If the requisition authority is a company, it may issue 25% of the amount in the form of shares. It is not compulsory. Section 27 provides for determination of amount of compensation. The market value of the land proposed to be acquired is not same as amount to be fixed by compensation. The compensation payable to the landowner should cover the value of the other assets. Solatium and interest also to be ascertained and added to the compensation. So the collector for determination of award, so many other things there. I am looking to my watch, it is already 5:45. Any questions may arise. Apart from this is the welfare legislation, and it provides protection to the displaced persons, farmers, owners, interested persons, affected family, and displaced persons, and persons who are in the scheduled area. Their interest is safeguarded. The important aspect which has to be noticed is the sustainable development for the purpose of the projects of the central government and the state government, and infrastructure facilities for the company, and housing purpose for the societies. There must be a sustainable development, and there are mandatory procedures to be followed. There should not be any arbitrariness in acquisition. There must be transparency. Certain safeguards provided, statutory safeguards provided under the statute must be complied with by the collector, the committee, state government, and at the same time the resettlement and rehabilitation resettlement must be mandatorily provided, is the substance of this act. According to me, this enactment is enacted keeping in view that participation of not only the owners, the Grama Sabhas, the representatives of the village panchayat, they have got a say in the matter whether this proposed acquisition of lands serves the public purpose or not. If it doesn't serve the public purpose, it will affect the food safety, it affects the environmental aspect, it affects the social impact will be there, then you shall not acquire. These are all the procedures which are required to be taken into consideration. Now, this is about thing, and I wanted to tell you certain state legislatures, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, Gujarat state, they have amended the chapters, these chapters. That is the procedure which is provided under section 6, 7 and 8 and all other procedure, and the resettlement, rehabilitation, resettlement, those enactments under challenge before the respective high courts. In Karnataka, they have not challenged. In Andhra Pradesh, they have challenged. Telangana, they have challenged. Gujarat also, I am told that is challenged. And some of the writ petitions are pending before the Supreme Court. In this regard, the constitutional position is that since the subject matter is in the concurrent list, both the parliament and state legislature have got legislative power to enact their own enactment if the Central Act can be amended, it must, while amending, under Article 254(2), the President assent is received, then there is no repugnancy, what is stated under Article 254(2). But the state enactment completely contrary and conflicts with the central enactment. Now, all these enactments run contrary to the central enactment with regard to the social impact, environmental impact, rehabilitation, resettlement, Gram Sabhas, etc., because all these chapters, provisions are suspended under the state legislature. The law on this point, right from 1959, when the state legislature is no doubt they have got the legislative power to amend the Central Act. They can give more rights to the persons. The rights already there in the central enactment. Your provisions conflict with the central enactment. The Law and Justice Department Affairs, Law and Parliament Affairs Ministry, at the time of seeking assent of the President, reasons must be provided that these provisions, these chapters of the Central Act, we are amending in exercise legislative power of the state legislative power. For these reasons, we wanted to have our own substantive provisions of the Act, which will conflict with the central enactment. Then those reasons must be justifiable reasons. Then grant of assent by the President is not mechanical. He must apply his mind. If he does not apply his mind, then if it is conflict with that law, the President of India is required to examine the case law on this aspect. The Supreme Court has clearly said, right from 1959, namely, Deep Chand versus State of Uttar Pradesh, AR 1959, Premnath Kaul versus State of Jammu Kashmir 1959, Pandit Uka Kolhe versus State of Maharashtra, AR 1963, Bar Council of Uttar Pradesh versus State of Uttar Pradesh, another 1973, T. Barai versus Henry Ahoy, another 1983 Supreme Court, page 150. Poisat Pharmaceutical Limited versus and another versus State of Bihar, 1983. ITC versus State of Karnataka, 1985. Lingappa Pochanna Appalwar and versus Maharashtra, AR 1985. These series of judgments, in latest judgments also, says if though Article 254(2) protects the state legislative provisions, which conflicts with the Parliament law, which is already enacted by the Parliament. Parliament has got the power to enact, to nullify the state legislature, then the Parliament law will prevail. Not only that, if the law which is enacted by the state legislature in exercise of its legislative power conflict with the provisions of the Parliament law must prevail, is the law of the Supreme Court. So therefore, the state legislative power exercised by the respective state legislature, though the Land Acquisition Act 1894 is repealed, the present enactment is conflicting with the state legislature, then the Parliament law will prevail, but not the state legislature. He is the binding precedent on the state legislature. They are binding because it is Article 141. Law is laid down by the Supreme Court after examining Article 254, 1 and 2 of the Constitution of India, right from 1959. So therefore, the central enactment holds the field with regard to the acquisition, because it is procedure, the transparency and rehabilitation, resettlement is provided, and compensation, the safeguards are provided, detailed procedure is provided, solution is 100%, multiplier factor is provided, factor is not there in that case. All these aspects are protecting the farmers and also the village republic, according to me, this enactment must be properly interpreted. Now, you must have on 6/3/2020, even earlier to that, in 2018, this Indoor Development Authority case. The Indoor Development Authority case, you know it, that Indoor Development Authority is under the Constitutional Bench, Article 24, Section 24, 1A and B, 24(2), he provides for lapsing of the proceedings. Lapsing of the proceedings, if on the date of this act has come into force, 1st January 2014, prior to that 5 years, if possession is not taken or the compensation is not deposited in the court, if it is offered, not taken, it must be paid and deposited. If it is not done, the Constitutional Bench, contrary to the interpretation principle of golden rule of interpretation, as has been held, interpreted in second Anthule's case, 1988, based on the English law, the Supreme Court has held, legislated, or as and or nor, that each word used in the statute by the Parliament, after taking into consideration of the various important aspects, Supreme Court did not think of waiting more than 5 years. It said possession must be taken if you acquire the land, or deposit must be made, paid or deposited in the court. The Constitutional Bench says possession and deposit. Deposit not necessarily in the court, it can be in the treasury also is a deposit, valid deposit. By adding and nor, by wrongly interpreting, legislating the words into section 24(2) is contrary to the judgment of E.R. Anthule versus R.S. Naik 7-judge bench. The judgment is per imperium. In this case, Supreme Court, earlier first case, the special judge was empowered to conduct a trial. Supreme Court felt that the special judge in the lower court under the act, which is conferred the power, statutory power, are ready with the provisions of the Criminal Procedure Code. In the Supreme Court, in the first case, they felt that we must confer this power upon the High Court judge. This Anthule went and challenged that. Supreme Court said, 7 judges, we have committed a mistake, we have to retrace our steps, and even writ petition is maintainable. In exercise of our jurisdiction, we shall not confer jurisdiction contrary to the statutory provision of the Act. Therefore, you have exceeded. Therefore, we are correcting, and it has gone to the special judge under the Prevention of Corruption Act 1952. So, on that count, the judgment is void, is ultra vires to the Constitution, is ultra vires to the statute, and it is per inquirium for non-consideration of Anthule's case with regard to the interpretation of the law. Supreme Court has missed to consider the important aspect of Lord Denning. I wanted to read that passage. There is one important judgment of House of Lords. The Supreme Court did not agree, the House of Lords did not agree with the Lord Denning with regard to the interpretation, he has said beautifully. That judgment of Constitutional Bench is contrary to another judgment of the Supreme Court in the case of State of West Bengal and others versus Shivananda Pathak and others, 1998 Supreme Court, page 2050, wherein the Supreme Court has held judges have to refrain from reiterating their dogmatic views in a subsequent proceedings of the same case, as that would be exhibitive of his bias in his own favor to satisfy his egoistic judicial obstinacy. This judgment I am referring because Arun Mishraji, Justice Arun Mishraji, was the presiding judge, dissenting judgment in Indore Development Authority case. He has been asked to preside the Constitutional Bench. Therefore, this judgment comes in his way. It is a case of egoistic judicial obstinacy, exhibitive of his bias. Of course, this argument has been repelled by the bench when it was argued. Even then, this is contrary to the judgment of the Supreme Court. And I wanted to quote the judgment of the House of Lords. I noted here. 1 second. Because with regard to interpretation. In Nayak's case, observations of Tyndall's Chief Justice in Re Sussex Peerage case 1844 were reiterated in Antule's case. When any doubt arises from terms employed by the legislature, that is with regard to the section 24(2), it has always been held a safe means collecting the intention. What is the intention of section 24(2)? The object is provided. The intention is that long period you are not passing the word, you are not paying compensation, therefore we have to ease out. We must go to the rescue of the landowners. That is the object. So intention to call and aid the object and purport of the making statute as well as the preamble of the statute as keys to open the minds of the makers of the statute and which they intend to redress. This is not considered. This is the case. Again, this is contrary to the Apex Court judgment. That is the Privy Council, Nazir Ahmad versus King Emperor, 1936, where a power is given to do a certain thing in a certain way. The thing must be done in that way or not at all. In the case of expropriatory legislation like 1894 Act, which are necessary to be strictly construed, this view was not only right in principle, but also in concordant with the noble and lofty object and purport of the new 2013 Act, which is quintessentially a welfare legislation according to primacy to the proper and prompt rehabilitation and resettlement and land losers. Law laid down in this case, Shiv Shakti's case, that is 2003. The distinction between paid, offered, tendered is emphasized by the Apex Court in its cogent reasoning, where it is especially pointed out that legislature is enacting 2003 Act was well aware of the distinction between paid, offered, tendered as used in section 31 of the 1894 Act and made a deliberate choice In not only departing from the same, the apex court went on to observe that a deposit of compensation in a competent court of law after tendering the same to the interested persons would be an acceptable mode of discharge of obligation of the state for payment of compensation, whereas deposit in the treasury would not be suffice. Now, the constitutional bench says deposit in the treasury, that is not provided either under section 31(1) of the repealed act or under section 24(2). Deposit must be in the court. If it must be paid. That is not done. This is the principle on which I couldn't get this Lord Denning. Yes, Mr. Gupta, can I stop here or any questions are there?
Yes, good evening, Your Lordship.
Can I stop it here?
Sir, I think it was a very, very knowledgeable session, and there are a lot of participants who had a lot of questions.
Please.
I think, sir, if Your Lordship is comfortable, we may take the questions, or if Your Lordship is willing to give us knowledge, we are happy to get it with.
No.
I mean,
let them ask
heart
questions.
and
No
head
problem.
both together.
Let them ask questions.
I'm unable to hear Your Lordships.
I'm hearing.
Yes, Your Lordships.
Yes, please.
Yes, sir. There are a lot of questions, sir. I think we can take the question answers now.
Yes.
Or if Your Lordships are willing to go ahead, I think we can continue. Whatever suits Your Lordships.
Yeah, whatever you feel.
Your Lordship, actually, there are many participants since it was only for 1 hour, 30 minutes. So they have started leaving. We had around 700 registrations. And we are going to upload this on YouTube now because many could not join due to some technical issues. Your Lordship, we can take the questions. And
okay.
I really thank Your Lordship for such a knowledgeable session. And every participant has personally sent, many of the participants have sent messages to us for organizing this session. Yes. So, Your Lordship, the first question that is, by one Ms. Kanchal Gupta, it is what are the rules to decide the amount of solitium? Is it totally based on discretion of court?
What question?
What are the rules to decide the amount of solitium? SOLITIUM.
No. Schedule 1 clearly states after computing the market value of the acquired land multiplied by 1, market value of the land, I told you what are all the factors to be taken into consideration on the basis of willing buyer willing to offer to the seller and registration of the document in relation to the similar property, the potential to the property. If it is a developer property, then what should be done? Development charges should be deducted. Then it should be, that is the average of 3 years must be taken into consideration to determine the compensation under section 26 of the Land Acquisition Act 2013. That amount, even in relation to the crops also, it is the compensation, it is the property which they have said, it should be determined. Apply the multiplier 1, that is the market value. If market value is 1000 rupees or 10 lakh rupees, same amount of compensation must be paid is the solatium. Solatium is, they are clearly mentioned in the schedule 1. Schedule 1, first schedule is that equivalent to 100% of the market value of the land mentioned against serial number 1. That is market value of the land multiplied by 1. That is the market value. A factor specified against the serial number 2. That is, if it is in relation to the rural area, 1. If it is urban area, 2. or serial number 3 for urban area, plus value of assets attached to land or building against serial numbers 4 and 5. Not only crops, but the value attached to the trees, building, etc. must be considered and quantify, determine the compensation. For that amount, you must add this 100% solution. That is the very clear.
Thank you.
Schedule 1.
Since there is paucity of time, we'll only take 2-3 more questions. There are many that we have received, but we'll just take these 3 more. It is by the advocate Mr. Shivraj N. Arali. Can there be reassessment of compensation decided under the old act when the new act was passed in lines with the new act, despite the SLP being pending? That is in case the SLP is pending, my lords. Can there be a reassessment of compensation?
No. That again, we have to examine matter is pending at the instance of the beneficiary or requiring authority, or the state government, or the party. SLP is filed by whom?
Your Lordship, these things are not been cleared, but that's just if you can give an understanding.
No. If I'm telling you, when was the award passed in the new act? That is also important. Because section 25 says 24, if award is not passed, acquisition of land within 5 years before the act came into force, 24(1)(b), before 5 years, they have got the right to pass an award under the new act. New act has come into force 2014. If they have passed an award within a year from January 2014, or 1 more year, 12 months extended by state government by recording reasons within 2 years, then it will be a valid award under section 24(1)(b). Otherwise, ready with 25. Otherwise, lapses. Acquisition proceedings are lapses.
Lordships, myself, Shivraj N. Arali, my lords, I'm practicing from Bangalore.
Yes.
Your Lordships, good evening.
Good evening.
It was a very quite informative lecture, my lords. I had one doubt. Our MFA leading to SLP was pending, my lords, at the instance of the claimants.
No, MFA regarding the compensation.
Compensation, my lords, under the old act.
Then that means the compensation award is passed under the new old act.
Yes, my lords, it was passed under the old act. And during the pendency of those litigations, my lords, which were being before the Honorable High Court as well as Supreme Court, this 2013 enactment came up. And can the claimants in that old act take the benefit or seek the indulgence of court to interpret in lines with the new act?
No. You say acquisition proceedings that attained finality? Acquisition proceedings prior to the new act came into force attained finality?
Your Lordships, I think Mr. Shivraj is having some trouble in speaking now. He's been unmuted. Yes, Mr. Shivraj.
Yes, there was the acquisition proceedings were started under the foreign note in Millards in 1990.
No, acquisition proceedings attained finality.
Finalities.
Final. So award was passed under the old act.
Yes, Millards.
Then the award is governed by the old act, not new act.
Millards, it amounts to inequalities. What is my?
No, that is that you have to challenge. That you have to challenge the section 26 before the constitutional court.
Millards, because there are
Mr. Shivraj, I think we'll take this up again because there are other questions also. I think your main query is answered, right?
Please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Shivraj.
You can contact me. You are in Bangalore. You can contact me. I'll tell you.
Yes, Millards, I will.
Yes, yes, Your Lordship. There are
please.
few other queries, but we'll just take up 2 more questions. Just a minute, let's take them. Your Lordship, this is the very specific query. What can be argued? It's anonymous, so I'll just read it. It is argued that due to the infirmities in the conceptualization of property rights in India, people from many communities, be it agricultural labor, poor, or be it indigenous labor of Narmada Valley, continue to be dispossessed of their property given the prevalent land acquisition laws and the state's exercise of eminent domain power. How can we rectify this? Is there a way ahead? Thank you.
No, the acquisition under the old act in that case, acquisition and compensation, they have framed a special scheme, rehabilitation and resettlement in that case. In fact, 2 years back, I went to Bhopal to preside the Janata Nyayalaya. I know the farmers from Narmada Valley, they came and deposed before our Janata Nyayalaya. I know some of the facts of that case. Acquisition prior to 2013, acquisition 1894 for the project of irrigation project building the dam. The rehabilitation resettlement which is provided by the Supreme Court, they have not implemented at all. Displaced persons have not been provided the housing facility, residential area, infrastructures are not provided. Even the houses and the villages are displaced either on account of inundating the water for the purpose of irrigation project. They must be provided with the sites and construct the houses. They must provide the hospital, police station, school, roads, so many things that they have not done there. Even then, even now, some of the chief ministers, some chief minister of Madhya Pradesh, chief minister of Rajasthan, so all those 3 states are there involved in that acquisition. Therefore, the rehabilitation, resettlement, they have to enforce. They are struggling. There is a way they are. They went in demonstration, dharna. They are struggling like anything. They are not poor people. They are not getting anything. Sorry, state of affairs there.
Thank you, Your Lordship. And I think, Your Lordship, because of the time, I think we must now, we can now conclude. If Your Lordship has anything further specific to say, we can take it. Otherwise, Your Lordship, I may like to give the concluding.
No, I wanted to tell about that how the interpretation made by Lord Denning found fault with by House of Lords in the subsequent judgment, holding that it amounts to legislation. Legislating, the judiciary has no power of legislating. That's the judgment which I'm searching. I could not able to get it. Anyway, I'll pass on to you that judgment.
So, Your Lordship, we'll put it on YouTube then, that judgment.
Yes, I'll give the judgment to you.
Yes. Your Lordship, one more thing, I would like to just thank every person who has joined the webinar today and taken such great knowledge from Your Lordships. And would like to introduce the organizing committee along with me, sir. That's Mr. Anup Jain. He's from Udit Kishan and Associates. From Fortis India Law, it is Rubina Khan. And also Mr. Abhijit Shinde, who helped us in organizing the present session. So, Lordship, I'll just unmute them so that they can just have a word with you.
Please.
Sure. There have been 2 hands raised for questions. I'll just ask them for the questions in the meanwhile. Yes, Abhijit, sir, please continue. Justice Gowda here.
So it was a very, very knowledgeable session. Thank you for taking up the request and coming here for this session. And we are truly obliged to have you here, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Justice Gowda, Your Lordships may also say, what is the next topic that Your Lordship is willing to speak on anytime next week or a week thereafter? And we will organize this time. I'm sure we had more than 750 registrations, but due to some technical issue, not more than 300 could get in the room at one point of time. But for next time, I'm sure. Yes, Your Lordship.
The whole next week, a series of lectures I'm delivering.
Yes.
Delhi, Andhra Pradesh, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, so many other topics. Tomorrow also there is a topic which I have to deliver here. Bar Association of Bangalore. This is the judgment. Hello. Hello.
Yes, your lordships.
This was the judgment which I wanted to bring it to your notice. Lord Goddard, the interpretational acrobatics of Lord Denning, in the case of Seaford Court Estate Limited versus Asher, Lord Simons resonated with his view in disapproving the bold effort of Lord Denning for being a naked usurpation of the legislative function under the thin disguise of interpretation. The recent ruling of a constitutional bench of the Apex Court in Indore Development Authority versus Manohar Lal and others, by Justice so is creatively interpreting, rather rewriting Section 24 of the Right to Fair Compensation Act, is yet another exemplary case in a point of time. Trend of progressively snowballing judicial hubris in the Indian judiciary. This is what I wanted to make observation. This Lord, in Seaford case, Lord Denning, the interpretation found fault with by Lord Simons. It amounts to legislative function of a judiciary which is not conferred with that. That exactly done under Section 24(2) by interpreting 24(2).
Yes, your lordship. In fact, we had the publisher, Taxman, Manish Bhatia. He messaged me just now personally that he wants me to unmute him. I'm just unmuting him and seeing, but yes, Mr. Manish Bhatia wants you, sir, since on land acquisition laws, there are no new good books for law students as well as for lawyers, sir. So I'm just, I've unmuted him, sir. He's just going to put in 2 words to you, sir. Yes, Mr. Manish Bhatia, you may take over.
Yes. Hello, sir. It has been a pleasure hearing you.
Thank you.
And in fact, yeah, would really be candid enough to invite you, to have some more views on the land acquisition law and all, because, I suppose that, as such, there are no latest guidelines and knowledge facts which have been laid on. So it will be really a great honor to bring you on board as a taxman, sir.
No, I can, if anybody has commentary is written, I can edit it.
Sure, sir. What we will do is, sir, we will organize that, sir. We'll make a group of lawyers who will make a detailed commentary, and thereafter, sir, we'll get it vetted by you and then send it to Taxman, sir, for publication. We can do that.
To my knowledge, it must have been a good commentary on this book with all case law.
Sir, no latest one, but that's why Manish is saying that we must have one on by the publication of Taxman, sir. So
take the assistance of some good lawyer, collect all the judgments. It is not only on the Land Acquisition Act, with regard to the objects and intendment of the Act, the interpretation made, all these things you can collect the judgments and you write a beautiful commentary you can bring out. If anybody writes, I will edit it.
Sure. Oh, okay. My lord, what we'll do is we will organize that for you so that you can edit it and finalize it, my lords.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And my lords, now maybe close the session and just have the closing remarks by by Fortis Law Associates.
You must special thanks to Mr. Satish Chandra.
Yes, Dr. Satish Chandra, of course. I think, yes, he's here. I'll just unmute him.
Yes.
Just. Dr. Chandra, his lordship wants to, yes.
Yes, lordship.
You have participated in this lecture.
Yeah. I listened very carefully, lordship. And this was thought-provoking. And it gives the history of this Land Acquisition Act from the British era to 2013. And how this has come the part of the Article 300A. Earlier it was in 31. All the circumstances you have narrated nicely. And Keshwan Bharti's case, all are these landmark judgments. who made the contribution for this one.
No. Sustainable development, not necessarily the development one way traffic. Only coming the industries and entrepreneurship by reducing the area of land, then the land is not available for cultivation and grow food grains. What will happen?
Naturally, Lordship, in India, 80% is the agriculture land.
Yes.
So we will have to watch the interest of the farmer, poor farmer. And
No, not only interest.
Yeah.
The persons who are settled down in urban area,
Yeah.
if they don't produce, where will you get? You have to, now there's some self-reliance in food safety now. We have got lot of food grains stored in Food Corporation of India.
Right, a lot.
Because they are growing. If land is acquired, convert into a real estate, where will you get food grains and horticulture crop and
Real estate and moreover factories and all urbanizations, industries, all these things.
yes.
So
Yeah, what will happen to them?
but still, I think, Lordship, that procedure is a little more complicated.
Yes.
Still complicated. So many
Yeah.
committees, so many panchayat and all these things.
There are safeguards. They are all safeguards.
Just to safeguards, in the name of safeguards, the procedure is complicated.
No. Otherwise, no. If that procedure is not there, the earlier arbitrary exercise of power and forcing the laborers, I mean the farmers' land acquired, we also interpreted right from 1963 Supreme Court Somodhi case. Deposit of 1 rupee is sufficient compliance under statute.
Earlier, the disputed point only the purpose.
State government exercise power.
Compensation.
Supreme Court and High Courts have mechanically accepted that it is good acquisition for public purpose without verifying. The trend started right from 95 HMT case. Part 7 is not followed. Cooperative societies, all bogus membership is made. They have years to decades together. They are litigating. They are not closing. They are not implementing. Taking possession, utilizing that. Persons who have got 2, 3, 4 sites, 5 sites. Real estate agents have come there.
That is true. But on the other hand, there is another picture in Bengal. Mamata Banerjee is the Sangrur.
That do you know what happened in the Singur case?
Paid and land was returned.
No. Singur case, please read it. I have not made comment. The lot of things I could have said, I did not. I refrained to say. The industry is coming and choosing the land.
Naturally.
It is the eminent domain power exercised by the state government.
Naturally, whenever the industrialist will come, he will ask the land and the state will have to provide.
All potential lands, 3 crops, 4 crops, near 20 kilometers near to city. Aura district there. I passed through the district where I went 2 years back, 1.5 years back. I passed through all agriculture, paddy cultivation lands.
Yeah, 3 crops land.
3 crops land.
3 crops lands. Lordship, somehow your lecture was so nice and thought-provoking and gives the clarity to everyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justice Chandra. I will now hand it over, Your Lordship, to Ms. Rubina Khan to give the closing remarks.
Chalo, give him.
Thank you, Justice Chandra.
Good evening, my lord.
Good evening.
It was really an honor to actually have both of you on this platform today. And my Lord Justice Gowda, I would heartily thank you on behalf of Udit Kishan Associates, Fortis India Law, and all the participants for this learned experience. It was an immense learning experience and a very great opportunity for all of us. And we really look forward for having much more such immense learning sessions from you, sir. Both of you, rather, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. And Justice Gowda, since we had so many participants who couldn't attend, we are going to upload this on YouTube and send a link to all the people who have registered, Your Lordships.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we can close it, huh?
Yes, sir. We can now end the meeting, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Your Lordship. And thank you, Justice Satish Chandra. Yes, thank you, Lordship.